We begin tonight with the escalation in the president's crackdown on illegal immigration.
Today's dramatic escalation in the Trump administration's conflict with judges.
The Trump administration signaling a major escalation in its deportation efforts.
Today, an escalation in the Trump administration's battle with the judiciary.
Tensions between local and federal authorities over President Trump's immigration crackdown escalated today.
We begin this hour with a major escalation of the Trump administration's crackdown on immigration.
We begin with what appears to be a major escalation in the Trump administration's deportation efforts.
And what is a major escalation in the battle here in D.C. over immigration and deportation.
This feels like an insane and reckless escalation from the Trump administration arresting a judge. I will tell you, you are not alone.
It seems like the legacy media, the corporate institution that parrots the exact same talking points given to them by the DNC, is simply never going to learn. Their era of influencing public opinion is over. Wait until you see the latest polls on President Trump's mass deportation operation. The arrests continue. There were literally thousands placed in custody over the weekend for deportation. And we're going to see precisely why it's all just the very beginning. Hey, gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor, here to celebrate right along with you the dawn of a new American golden age that you made possible back on November the 5th. So if you want a front row seat on everything having to do with the rise of a new conservative civilizationalist age all over the world, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. Also, gang, did you see that President Trump just signed an executive order outlining his plans to create America's first national sovereign wealth fund, and it's going to need to be filled up with assets fast. Trump wants a go-live plan in the next 90 days. The Wall Street types are already focused on packing it with real estate and infrastructure and pieces of trendy companies like TikTok. But let's not forget about gold. Sovereign wealth funds love to buy gold in bulk. Australia's been loading up. Saudi Arabia is buying the world's largest gold mine to supply itself. And even tiny Singapore recently added more than 100 metric tons of gold to its vaults. Now, can you imagine what can happen to the per ounce price of gold, which has already been surging sky high since Trump took office, if America's new sovereign wealth fund followed international best practices and made gold a part of its diversified portfolio? I mean, it would potentially make our country a brand new mega buyer in an already tight market. And when there's limited supply and huge demand, the impact on prices, well, let's just say you're going to want to be ready. Now, there's a simple way to get ready, too. It's all laid out for you in the free gold report from my partners at turleytalkslikesgold.com. You want to request your copy right away. After all, President Trump has put the world on notice. A new sovereign wealth fund for America may be coming, perhaps as little as the next 90 days. Take advantage of the time you've got to prepare. Get your free gold report now at turleytalkslikesgold.com. So as it turns out, the latest Democrat propaganda stunt amplified by the legacy media just completely blew up in their faces. The whole 24/7 barrage of legacy media propaganda that this guy Garcia, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, was just a humble, quiet, law-abiding Maryland man, a Maryland father to boot. That narrative is officially flopped. The latest CBS poll over the weekend, and again, keep in mind, CBS polling is never favorable to Trump, but nevertheless, even CBS is showing that nearly 60% of voters, 56%, support Trump's unprecedented mass deportation operation. Again, this is after an all-out deliberate effort by both the Democrats and their pathetic mouthpieces in the legacy media to convince voters that the Trump administration has actually begun deporting American citizens, not just illegal migrants, but Maryland men, Maryland fathers. They're getting deported now to Salvadoran prisons by this reckless authoritarian regime, the oligarchy. The oligarchy, as Bernie Sanders would call it. But it's all obviously not working. If 56% of voters are behind you, you put the pedal to the metal, and that's exactly what the Trump administration is doing. We saw over 1,000 illegal migrant arrests over the past weekend alone. It's being called Operation Tidal Wave. It's a joint effort between ICE and local law enforcement agencies, particularly in the state of Florida, where they're working together to arrest illegal aliens. Within the first 4 days, approximately 800 illegals have been arrested. Many of them are gang members, killers, terrorists. Here's CBS News Miami.
ICE Miami and Florida law enforcement arrested nearly 800 undocumented migrants in the first 4 days of their Operation Tidal Wave this week. In response, Governor Ron DeSantis posted that, quote, Florida is leading the nation in active cooperation with the Trump administration for immigration enforcement and deportation operations.
And in Colorado, over 100 criminal aliens were arrested at a nightclub in Colorado Springs over the weekend. The DEA says there was a drug trafficking, there was prostitution, crimes of violence, weapons seized. Over a dozen active duty military members were working as armed security or attending the club. And among those arrested were, of course, members of Tren de Aragua and MS-13. And look at this. Trump is engaged in some PR brilliance here. Take a look at what's on the White House front lawn here. It's lined with hundreds of mugshots of illegal aliens who've been arrested along with their crimes, such as murder and sexual assault and child molestation and MS-13 and TDA gang membership. Absolutely brilliant. Turning the White House front lawn into a massive billboard for Trump's very, very popular mass deportation operation. Now, needless to say, in the face of Trump's obvious success here, it really is hard to believe just how broken, just how shattered the Democrats and the legacy media are. Nothing reveals that more than their reaction to the arrest of Milwaukee County Circuit Judge Hannah Dugan. Now, you know Dugan is being accused of directing federal agents away from the hallway outside of her courtroom, all as she intentionally hustled illegal alien defendant Eduardo Flores Ruiz, whose case she was supposed to hear, out another door, purposely shielding him from federal law enforcement, which of course is a felony. It was so utterly egregious that even CNN had to admit that this judge's actions were undeniably criminal.
Looking at the complaint, let's strip the politics out of it. This is a crime. If they can prove what happened here, it is a crime. This judge, let's strip the Trump of it all out. Let's strip the immigration of it all out. Let's say law enforcement shows up at a building with an arrest warrant. They're looking for person A. Person B then says, hey, there's a secret escape door out back. I'm going to show you the way, and then ushers that person out the back door. That is textbook obstruction.
But right? We're waiting for the predictable but, right? That's the predictable pattern of the legacy media. If a crime has been committed in the name of something left-wing, if a crime has been committed in the name of defending liberalism and progressivism and wokeness, then it is always, always, always excused by definition by the legacy media. Anything that replaces liberalism, anything that challenges or is an affront to woke progressive norms and actions is by definition evil, according to the legacy media. So, yes, we know that what the judge did was wrong. We know it was illegal. We know it was criminal. But, yes, we know it was a crime. But, so, ladies and gentlemen, here is David Butt Brooks of the New York Times, the biggest butt of them all.
Well, obviously they're trying to send a note of intimidation, not only to her, but to all judges and maybe to all Americans. But I don't yet know the specific details of this case, whether she escorted the guy out the jury door or whether she's let him. So that's all murky. I don't want to comment on this specific case. But especially on the issue of immigration, there are a lot of people who are appalled by what the administration is doing. And there will be times for civil disobedience. And to me, let's say she did escort this guy out the door. If federal enforcement agencies come to your courtroom and you help a guy escape, that is two things. One, it strikes me as maybe something illegal, but it also strikes me as something heroic. And in times of trouble, then people are sometimes called to do civil disobedience. And in my view, when people do civil disobedience, they have to pay the price. That's part of the heroism of it, frankly. And so you can both think that she shouldn't have legally done this, and that morally protecting somebody against, or maybe not even in this case, but in other cases, frankly, a predatory enforcement agency.
A predatory enforcement agency. I want you to think about that. A predatory enforcement. Is that what federal agents have become now, David? A predatory enforcement agency? Let me ask you, David, is that what they were when they did the unthinkable, the unprecedented, for the first time in our nation's history, when they raided the home of a former and future president? Is that what you called them back then? Let's take a little stroll down memory lane, shall we? Here is that very same David Butt Brooks after federal agents, these very same federal agents, raided President Trump's home at Mar-a-Lago.
As the days have gone by, the gravity of what the FBI did and the justification for what they did have grown. And so first we learned this was not a rash thing, that has been months in the making. They did issue a subpoena. They walked through this step by step. And then even the last few hours, we've learned that, as Jonathan said, if these documents are top secret documents, the people who know more about this than I, they say that's a really big deal. And one of the acts the president is being investigated for is the Espionage Act. Yeah. This is a serious act which, could be a decade in prison for a normal human being. And there are other acts, the potential falsification and mutilation of documents. That's also years in prison. And so these are not small crimes. These are major criminal, if they get to it, accusations. And if you have that kind of crime and you're a law enforcement officer, you got to do something.
So there you have it. There you have it. I mean, when federal agents raid and even later arrest someone who offends the liberal sensibilities of one David Butt Brooks, then, of course, law enforcement was forced to act. I mean, they didn't want to, but they had to. After all, no one is above the law. But when federal agents arrest someone who adheres to David Brooks' liberal sensibilities and who is actively resisting the fascist dictator in the White House, well, then those very same federal agents are now predatory enforcers. When Trump supposedly breaks the law, well, that's inexcusable and worthy of prison. When this judge breaks the law, sometimes civil disobedience is necessary, and breaking the law is heroic. David Brooks is giving us a textbook example of what is called anarcho-tyranny, where certain classes of people, namely progressives and the class of people that progressives protect, are considered above the law, whereas others, like President Trump and his supporters, the J6 defenders and the like, they're subject to intense legalism. So anarcho-tyranny is a combination of license and legalism. We've all experienced it in some way, shape, or form in our own lives. Think about when a police officer charges you a $100 fine because your parking meter went 10 seconds over the time limit, all the while ignoring the homeless guy 5 feet away from you shooting heroin, taking a crap on the sidewalk. That's anarcho-tyranny. It's a strange combination of legal exemptions for some, but legal weaponization for others. And the key here for the likes of this big butt David Brooks is that proponents of anarcho-tyranny see criminals like illegal aliens, even ones who've committed violent crimes. They see the criminals as victims. The criminals are the victims. All the while, the law-abiding are the real victimizers. We're the criminals. We're the perpetrators. So that's key to get here. In an inverted anarcho-tyrannical system, law-abiding citizens are recast as the real criminals. And that's because they, according to this anarcho-tyrannical system, they purportedly perpetuate a political, economic, and legal system infested with racist and xenophobic policies. And so criminality, when perpetuated by what's now a new class of victims, a sanctified protected class, criminality is actually a cry for help. Crime is a cry. Illegal border crossings are desperate pleas for help, regardless if you're a struggling father or if you're a street gang member. Doesn't matter. Illegal activity, whatever it is a cry declaring that my illicit actions are indicative of a systemically racist and oppressive and xenophobic system that law-abiding citizens like you create and perpetuate. So that, in a nutshell, is anarcho-tyranny. And David Brooks and the New York Times are the most shameless, pathetic peddlers of that social evil. And that's what it is. Raiding the home of a former president who's supposedly suspected of engaging in a crime that's by definition a contradiction in terms, that is moral and good, whereas arresting a judge who admittedly engaged in criminal activity is immoral and predatory. That's the anarcho-tyrannical world of David Brooks. That's the woke world of the New York Times. They would throw any one of us in jail for the rest of our lives on any trumped-up charges, and they would feel good about it. They'd convince themselves that they were engaged in a morally righteous action because we're all, by virtue of our political sentiments and fidelities, we're all already guilty as far as they're concerned. It's called a banana republic. Again, the problem here for the likes of Brooks and legacy media is that voters have had it. Voters have overwhelmingly turned against them on this. The jig is up. The days of the legacy media being able to overwhelmingly influence public opinion, those days are over. They are long gone, and they're never coming back. And this is largely because we're in the position now to fact check them, just like I did. Because all of us now have access to the internet because of our hyperconnectivity. We can do exactly what I just did. We can revisit what these legacy media types who are having a temper tantrum over this judge being arrested. We can now revisit what these exact same people said about the raid on Mar-a-Lago or the various indictments against Trump, every one of which involved ridiculous charges, patently ridiculous charges, most especially that Mar-a-Lago raid. And we all find a consistent pattern of anarcho-tyranny, of license and legalism, where these supposed objective, disinterested, professional journalists are in point of fact just rabid partisans and cheerleaders for the Democrats and the establishment as a whole. Their days of mass persuasion are indeed over, and liberal judges in Wisconsin and illegal migrant criminals around the country are about to find out just how powerless the legacy media really has become. Hey there, Turley Talker. You know what? I'd love to hear from you. That's why I'm launching the Dr. Steve Hotline, where you can call in, leave a question, and maybe even hear your own voice featured on an upcoming episode of the show. Whether it's about the latest political shakeup or cultural trends or how we keep pushing forward in this new conservative age, I want to know what's on your mind. Call me at 717-844-5984. Just leave your question. I'll be checking in every single week to answer as many as I can. Again, that's 717-844-5984. Your chance to be a part of the conversation. One more time, 717-844-5984. Give me a call and let's talk.